The snow fell like white knives upon the mountains. The wind howled like a hungry wolf. Colt spurred his horse, feeling the cold penetrate to his bones. 8 months, 8 long months driving cattle through wild territories, sleeping under the stars, dreaming of this moment. His ranch appeared through the storm like a ghost, but something was wrong. Smoke rose from the chimney. Someone had lit his fireplace. Colt jumped down from his horse. His hand instinctively went to the revolver on his belt. Approached the door slowly. He pushed it open hard. "Freeze!" he shouted. Two young women jumped back from the fire. Their eyes shone with terror in the dim light. One of them raised her trembling hands. "Please don't hurt us." Colt lowered his weapon, confused. They were Apache women dressed in traditional clothes that were soaked and torn. The one who had spoken was spirited, with lively eyes. The other remained silent, watching him with a calmness that unsettled him. "Who are you? What are you doing in my house?" Colt asked, still aiming at them. The spirited woman stepped forward. "My name is Kimimla, she is Jalona," she said, gesturing to her companion. "We were freezing in the storm. We saw your house. We only wanted to warm up. I swear it. We'll leave as soon as the snow stops." Colt looked toward the window. The storm raged on with even more force. No one could survive out there tonight. "All right," he finally said, hanging up his coat. "But I want answers." He sat down across from them, the fire crackling between the three. Kimimla spoke first, her words flowing like a river overflowing its banks. Jalona remained silent, but Colt noticed how her eyes studied him with deep intelligence. The story was simple yet heartbreaking. Their tribe was migrating north toward new lands, better pastures, better water sources. But Jalona and Kimimla didn't want to leave. They had been born in these mountains. This was their home. "Families insist," Kimimla explained, her voice breaking. "They say the family must stay together, that we can't remain alone." "So you fled?" Colt asked. For the first time, Jalona spoke. Her voice was soft but firm, like the whisper of wind before a storm. "We didn't flee, we just needed time to decide." The storm lasted 3 days. During that time, something strange happened in the small cabin. 3 strangers became companions. Colt cooked simple stews. Kimimla cleaned and organized. Jalona fixed everything that was broken with skillful hands. Colt discovered the 2 women were completely different. Kimimla talked constantly, made jokes, laughed easily. Jalona was thoughtful, observant, but when she smiled, it was like the sun breaking through the clouds. On the second night, as snow battered the windows, Kimimla made soup with the herbs she carried in her bag. The aroma filled the cabin. "How did you learn to cook like that?" Colt asked. "My grandmother taught me," Kimimla replied with pride. "She said a woman who knows how to cook will never go hungry and will never be alone." Jalona looked up from the blanket she was mending. "And yet here we are alone." The silence was uncomfortable. Colt cleared his throat. "You're not alone, you're here." Jalona's eyes met his, and for a moment something passed between them, something Colt couldn't name but felt in his chest like a clenched fist. On the third night, Kimimla was already asleep in the corner. Colt went out to check on his horse in the stable. To his surprise, Jalona followed him. "Aren't you cold?" he asked. "I'm always cold," she replied, wrapping her blanket tighter. "But I needed to talk to you." "About what?" Jalona looked toward the mountains, invisible in the darkness. "Kimimla thinks we can stay here, that we can build a life without the tribe, but I don't know if that's possible." "Why not?" "Because family is everything to us. Without the tribe, who are we?" Colt thought of his own family, of his father who had died years ago. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "family isn't just blood. Sometimes it's the people you choose." Jalona looked at him for a long moment. Then, without saying anything else, she returned to the cabin. Colt stayed outside, watching the snow fall, wondering what the hell was happening to his heart. On the 4th day, the storm finally ceased. The sun shone over a white, pure world. Kimimla shouted with joy, running outside like a child. But the joy was short-lived. On the horizon, 3 figures on horseback were approaching slowly. Jalona paled. "They're from our tribe." Colt felt his stomach tight. "What do they want?" "They've come for us," Jalona whispered. The 3 riders stopped in front of the cabin. They were elders, their faces weathered by years of sun and wind. The one leading the group dismounted with difficulty. "Jalona, Kimimla," his voice was grave but not cruel. "Your families are worried. It's time to return." The elder's name was Takoda. His gray eyes had seen 70 winters. Beside him were Chitsa, a woman with a stern face but kind eyes, and Kuruk, the second man who remained silent, watching everything. "Grandfather," Jalona said, bowing her head with respect, "we didn't expect you." "Of course you didn't expect us," Chitsa interrupted, crossing her arms. "That's why you fled in the middle of the night like thieves." "We didn't flee," Kimimla protested. "We just needed time to think." Takoda raised a hand, asking for silence. His eyes settled on Colt, who had come out of the cabin and stood beside the women. "And who are you, cowboy?" "Colt, this is my land." "I see," Takoda nodded slowly. "Did you know these women have families waiting for them, that their tribe needs them?" Colt looked at Jalona, then at Kimimla. "I know they were trying to make a decision." The decision is already made, Chitsa declared firmly. The tribe leaves at dawn tomorrow for the new lands. Jalona and Kimimla are coming with us. Families do not separate. Kimimla stepped forward, her voice trembling but defiant. What if we don't want to go? The silence that followed was heavy as stone. Kuruk finally spoke, his deep voice resonating in the cold air. Then you will be alone, completely alone. Do you understand what that means? No protection, no community, no one when hard times come. Jalona lowered her gaze. Colt saw her shoulders sag slightly. Takoda approached the two women, his expression softening. Girls, I understand you. I was also born in these mountains. I know every rock, every tree, but the world is changing. We must change with it or die. Or find a new way to live, Jalona murmured. Here alone, Chitsa shook her head. Be realistic. Colt cleared his throat. Everyone looked at him. With all due respect, sirs, maybe you should give them more time to decide. Takoda studied Colt with new eyes. Cowboy, this is none of your concern. They're on my land, that makes it my concern. Kuruk took a threatening step toward Colt, but Takoda stopped him with a gesture. Easy, brother, he turned back to Colt. I appreciate your hospitality to our young women, but this is a matter of family, of tribe. You cannot understand our ways. I understand their people, Colt replied calmly, and people deserve to choose their own path, Chitsa snorted. Pretty words from a lonely cowboy. What do you know of family, of community? Colt felt the sting of those words. It was true, he had been alone for years. Takoda sighed deeply. Listen, we haven't come to fight. We've come because the families are worried. Jalona, your grandmother hasn't slept since you left. Kimimla, your mother cries every night. Kimimla felt tears burning her eyes. Jalona clenched her fists. We'll give you until tomorrow at noon, Takoda continued. We'll return. By then, you must be ready to come with us. This is your last chance. He paused, looking at them with genuine sadness. We don't want to force you, but you must understand, if the tribe leaves without you, you will truly be alone. There will be no turning back. The three elders mounted their horses. Before leaving, Chitsa turned one last time. Think with your heads, not your hearts. The heart can be deceiving. The horses' hooves moved away, leaving deep marks in the snow. Kimimla was the first to break the silence. They can't force us. They can't. They're not forcing us, Jalona said softly. They're just reminding us of reality. They entered the cabin. The warm atmosphere of the previous days had disappeared, replaced by a heavy tension. Colt made coffee while the women sat by the fire. No one spoke. Finally, Jalona looked up. Colt, can we ask you something honest? Sure. Why are you defending us? You barely know us. Colt served the coffee, carefully thinking about his answer. I was young. My father wanted me to stay on his ranch to follow in his footsteps, but I wanted to be a cattle driver to travel to see the world. He sat down across from them. We had a terrible fight. I left. He never forgave me. He died 5 years later. We never made peace. Jalona and Kimimla listened in silence. What I learned, Colt continued, is that some decisions have no right answers, only consequences, and you have to be able to live with them. Do you regret it? Mimla asked quietly. Every day, Colt admitted, but I also know that if I had stayed just because he wanted me to, I would have been miserable. I would have lived another man's life, not mine. Jalona looked into the fire, her eyes reflecting the flames. It's different for us. It's not just our parents, it's the whole tribe, our entire community. I know. Silence fell again. That night, Kimimla fell asleep quickly, exhausted by the emotions, but Jalona stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. Colt couldn't sleep either. He went outside. To his surprise, Jalona was already there, looking at the stars. You can't sleep either, he observed. Too many thoughts. They stood together in silence. Finally, Jalona spoke. Colt, what do you see when you look at your future? He considered the question. Honestly, I've never thought much about it, one day at a time. I used to see my future clearly, she said. Live with my tribe, marry someday, have children, grow old, surrounded by my people. But now. Her voice broke slightly. Now what? Now I don't know what I see. Colt felt his heart race. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know what. Jalona turned to him. Tomorrow we have to decide, and honestly, I'm terrified. Whatever you decide, Colt said, it will be the right one. Dawn came too quickly. Colt hadn't slept all night. His thoughts swirled like a whirlwind. At noon, the elders would return, and then Jalona and Kimimla would leave forever. He got up before the women and made strong coffee. He was looking out the window when he heard movement behind him. Good morning, Jalona said softly. Her eyes showed she hadn't slept either. Good morning. Colt poured her a cup. Have you decided? Jalona didn't answer immediately. She sat by the fire, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. Kimimla wants to stay. She says we can build a life here. And you? I think about my grandmother, my mother, everyone we left behind. A tear rolled down her cheek. How can I be happy knowing they're suffering because of me? Colt sat across from her. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. He saw the pain in her eyes, the battle raging within her heart. Jalona, he began, his voice more serious than he intended. I have to tell you something. She looked at him, waiting, but Colt stopped. The words stuck in his throat. What was he going to say? That he had fallen in love with her in just 4 days. That the thought of seeing her leave was breaking his heart. It sounded ridiculous even in his own mind. "What is it?" Jalona asked. Colt took a deep breath. I think you should go with your tribe." Jalona blinked in surprise. "What? Your family needs you, your grandmother, your mother, they love you and you love them." Colt forced himself to continue, though every word hurt. "I've lived with the regret of walking away from my family for years. I don't want that for you. But I thought." Jalona didn't finish the sentence. Kimimla entered at that moment, yawning. "What's going on?" Colt stood up. "I was telling Jalona that I think you should go with your tribe." "What?" Kimimla nearly shouted. "But last night you said we should follow our hearts." "And I meant it," Colt replied firmly. "But I also say that family is important, more important than anything." Jalona looked at him with an expression Colt couldn't decipher: disappointment, relief, confusion. "I don't understand," Kimimla murmured. "Why did you change your mind?" "Because if you stay," Colt thought, "I don't know if I could ever let you go, and that wouldn't be fair to them." He said aloud, "I've been thinking all night, and I realized that you would regret it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday when you think about your families, about everything you left behind, that regret would consume you." Silence filled the cabin. Jalona finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "And what if we're right? What if this is our place?" Colt looked her directly in the eyes. "Then you'll come back. The new lands aren't that far. If after being with your tribe, seeing your families, you still feel this is your home, you'll come back. And I—" He stopped, taking a deep breath. "I'll be here." Kimimla shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. It's not fair that we have to choose." "Life is rarely fair," Colt said softly. Jalona abruptly stood up and walked out of the cabin. Kimimla looked at Colt with accusing eyes before following her friend. Colt was left alone, wondering if he had done the right thing. Outside, Jalona walked quickly through the snow, her boots sinking deep. Kimimla caught up with her. "Jalona, wait!" Jalona stopped but didn't turn around. "He's right, Kimimla. What are you talking about? I thought you felt something for him." "That's exactly why." Jalona turned, her face streaked with tears. "That's exactly why we need to leave. We barely know him. It's only been 4 days. How can we make a decision that will change our lives based on 4 days?" Kimimla was silent. "My grandmother raised me," Jalona continued. "She taught me everything I know. She took care of me when I was sick. She comforted me when I cried, and now she's suffering because I left. How can I stay knowing that?" "But what about your heart?" Jalona laughed bitterly. "My heart is confused. It doesn't know what it wants." The hours passed too quickly. The sun reached its highest point in the sky, and then 3 figures appeared on horseback on the horizon. Takoda, Chitsa, and Kuruk had returned. This time they didn't dismount. Takoda spoke from his horse. "It's noon. Have you made your decision?" Jalona and Kimimla looked at each other. A silent conversation passed between them. Finally, Kimimla nodded sadly. Jalona turned to the elders. "We'll go with you." Colt, who had been standing in the doorway of the cabin, felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. He knew this would happen. He had suggested it himself, but hearing it out loud was different. Chitsa looked relieved. "It's the right decision, girls." "But," Jalona added, her voice firmer, "now we have a condition." Takoda raised an eyebrow. "A condition? Colt will accompany us to the camp. We want to make sure we arrive safely." The 3 elders exchanged glances. Kuruk frowned. "It's not necessary. We'll protect them." "It's not negotiable," Kimimla said, crossing her arms. "Either he comes or we don't go," Takoda sighed. "All right, let the cowboy come." He looked at Colt. "Are you willing?" Colt nodded, not trusting his voice. "Then we leave in an hour," Takoda declared. "Prepare yourselves." The elders moved away to wait at a distance. Colt entered the cabin to prepare his horse and some provisions. Jalona followed him. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." "You don't have to thank me for anything." "Yes, I do." Jalona stepped closer to him. "Colt, I want you to know that these days have meant something to me, something important." Colt looked at her, his heart beating hard. "For me too." They stood there, inches apart, the world reduced to just the 2 of them. Then Kimimla entered. "Are you ready? It's time to go." The moment was broken. Colt saddled his horse. Jalona and Kimimla gathered their few belongings. The journey began in silence. 6 horses moved through the snow, leaving deep tracks behind. Takoda led the group, followed by Chitsa and Kuruk. Behind came Jalona, Kimimla, and Colt. The tribal camp was 3 days' journey north, across frozen valleys and treacherous mountains. The first day passed without incident. They camped that night by a frozen stream. While the elders prepared the fire, Colt tended to the horses. Jalona came over to help. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly, ensuring the others couldn't hear. "I want to." Colt adjusted the blanket on his horse. "I want to make sure you get there safely." "And then what? You just leave?" Colt didn't answer. He didn't know what to say. On the second day, the weather worsened. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon. Takoda looked at the sky with concern. "Another storm is coming," he murmured. "We must hurry." They spurred their horses, but the storm caught them before nightfall. The wind howled, the snow fell so thick they could barely see a meter ahead. There. Kuruk shouted, pointing to a rock formation. Shelter! They took refuge under a rocky overhang. The horses huddled together for warmth. They couldn't light a fire, the wind would extinguish it immediately. They huddled in the darkness, shivering from the cold. This is bad, Chitsa muttered. Very bad. The storm raged all night. Colt sat between Jalona and Kimimla, sharing what little warmth they had. He could feel Jalona trembling against him. Are you all right? He whispered. I'm cold, she stammered. Without thinking, Colt took off his coat and placed it over Jalona's shoulders over her own blanket. Colt, no, you'll be cold too. I'll be fine. Takoda watched them from the other side of the shelter, his expression inscrutable in the dim light. At dawn, the storm finally abated, but there was a new problem. The pass is blocked, Kuruk announced, returning from scouting ahead. An avalanche of snow, we can't continue this way. Is there another route? Colt asked. Takoda nodded slowly. Yes, but it will take us 2 days longer, and it's more dangerous. We have no choice, Chitsa said. They took the alternate route. The path was narrow, skirting dangerous cliffs. The horses moved carefully, feeling each step. They were halfway when Kimimla's horse slipped. Ah! She cried as the animal struggled to find its balance on the edge of the precipice. Colt reacted instantly. He threw himself off his horse, grabbed the reins of Kimimla's horse, and pulled with all his might, pulling it away from the edge. The horse steadied itself, breathing heavily. Kimimla was pale as snow. Are you okay? Colt asked, trying to calm both the horse and the woman. It's okay, thank you, Kimimla whispered, her hands trembling. Thank you, Colt. Kuruk, who had witnessed everything, nodded at Colt with respect. Even Chitsa seemed impressed. That night they camped in a safer place. This time they could light a fire. While everyone ate, Takoda sat down next to Colt. You have good reflexes, Cowboy. I just did what anyone would have done. Not anyone. Takoda looked into the flames thoughtfully. Why did you really come with us, Colt? Colt hesitated. To make sure they got there safely. Is that all? The elder's eyes were penetrating as if he could see directly into Colt's soul. No, Colt admitted finally. It's not just that. I know, Takoda leaned closer. I see how you look at Jalona, and I see how she looks at you. Colt felt his face burn. I don't. Don't lie to me, Cowboy. I'm old, not blind. Takoda sighed. But you must understand something. Jalona has responsibilities. She has family. She can't just abandon everything for feelings. I know, that's why I told her to go. Takoda looked at him in surprise. You told her to go? Yes, I told her family was more important. The elder studied Colt with new consideration. You are a wise man for your age or a fool, he murmured. Colt laughed softly. Sometimes it's the same thing. On the third day, they finally reached the tribal camp. It was enormous, with dozens of tipis arranged in circles. Smoke rose from multiple campfires. Children ran between the tents, dogs barked. As soon as they saw Jalona and Kimimla, people began shouting with joy. An old woman, hair white as snow, ran toward Jalona as fast as her legs would carry her. Girl, my girl! It was Jalona's grandmother. They embraced, both crying. Kimimla's mother also appeared, wrapping her daughter in a fierce hug. Colt watched from his horse, feeling a mix of happiness and pain. This was right. He could see it on their faces in the joy of the reunion. Jalona finally separated from her grandmother and looked at Colt. Her eyes were red from crying, but she was smiling. Her grandmother followed her gaze. Who is this man? Grandmother, this is Colt. He helped us. The old woman walked toward Colt, studying him with sharp eyes. You're the cowboy? Yes, ma'am. Takoda told me about you on his first visit. She extended her wrinkled hand. Thank you for taking care of my granddaughter. Colt took her hand gently. It was an honor. More people approached, curious. Jalona introduced Colt, explaining everything that had happened. The initial looks of suspicion softened as they heard the story. That night, the tribe organized a celebration for the return of the two women. There was music, dancing, food. Colt sat on the edge, watching. Kimimla came over to him. Why are you sitting here alone? It's not my celebration. Yes, it is. They're celebrating you too. Kimimla sat beside him. Colt, I have to tell you something. What? I saw what you did, convincing Jalona to come. It was noble. It was the right thing. It was. Kimimla looked at him directly. Because now she's here, surrounded by her family, and she's the saddest person in this camp. Colt followed her gaze. Jalona sat beside her grandmother, surrounded by relatives. She smiled, nodded, answered questions, but her eyes were empty. The celebration continued until late, but Jalona retired early. Colt saw her disappear into one of the larger tipis. Her grandmother followed her, concerned. Colt knew he should leave tomorrow. His job was done. He had brought them safely, but something kept him there, unable to move. Cowboy! Takoda's voice pulled him from his thoughts. The elder sat beside him. Tomorrow you'll leave. It wasn't a question. Yes, Colt replied. Tomorrow at dawn. Without saying goodbye, Colt didn't answer. Takoda sighed. Come with me, there's something you need to see. He led him toward Jalona's tipi. Inside, they could hear voices. Jalona's grandmother was speaking in their native tongue, her tone worried. Jalona responded, her voice breaking. What are they saying? Colt asked. Takoda translated quietly. The grandmother asks why Jalona is sad when she should be happy. Jalona says she's happy to see her, but what? But her heart is elsewhere. Colt felt his chest tight. The grandmother spoke again, more softly. Takoda continued translating. The grandmother says, "Girl, I have lived many years, I have seen many things, and I know how to recognize when someone has left their heart in another place." Jalona is sobbing now. "I'm sorry, grandmother, I'm so sorry. I want to be happy here. I want this to be enough." But, but do you love the cowboy? The grandmother finishes. Silence. Yes, Jalona whispers finally. I know it sounds crazy, it was only a few days, but yes, I think I love him. Colt felt like he couldn't breathe. The grandmother spoke again, her voice now firm. Takoda translated with a smile. Then you must tell him, foolish girl, you must tell him before he leaves. But the tribe and you, I can't abandon you again. Precious girl, the grandmother says, and now she speaks in Spanish so those outside can understand. I will not live forever. Perhaps I have 5 years left, perhaps 10 if I'm lucky. Do you want me to spend those years watching you wither from sadness, watching you live a life you don't want? But I promised you. You promised me nothing. I asked you to come, yes, because I was afraid of losing you forever. But now that you're here, now that I see your eyes, I know I've already lost you. Your body is here, but your spirit is with that cowboy. Jalona was crying openly. Now listen to me carefully, the grandmother continues. Family is not a chain that binds you. It's a river you can always return to. You can go with him, build your life, and still come back to see me. The new lands are not that far, 3 days' journey. You can visit me every month if you want. Do you really mean that? With all my heart. The grandmother laughs through tears. Besides, I want to meet my grandchildren someday, and something tells me that Cowboy would make beautiful babies. Despite everything, Jalona laughed. Takoda touched Colt's shoulder. Come, we shouldn't hear more. They moved away from the tipi. Colt was stunned, his mind reeling. The grandmother is wise, Takoda said. Wiser than me. I thought keeping the family together was the most important thing, but she taught me tonight that true love is also important. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet. Wait until tomorrow. Let Jalona come to you. That night, Colt barely slept. He had been given a small tipi for himself. He spent the hours staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every glance, every moment with Jalona. Was it possible? Could it really work? At dawn, Colt packed his things and saddled his horse. Some people were already awake, preparing the breakfast fire. They nodded to him as he passed. He was adjusting the reins when he heard footsteps running behind him. Colt, wait! He turned. Jalona was running toward him, still in her nightclothes, her hair loose and wild. Kimimla was running behind her, smiling. Jalona stopped in front of him, out of breath. You were going to leave without saying goodbye? I thought it would be easier. Easier, easier. Jalona hit him in the chest, not hard, but with emotion. None of this is easy, you foolish cowboy. Colt looked at her, confused but hopeful. Jalona took a deep breath. Colt, I have to tell you something. I know it sounds crazy. I know we barely know each other. It was only a few days, but in those days you showed me a possibility I had never imagined. You showed me that I can choose, that I can be more than just part of the tribe. I can be myself. Jalona, let me finish, she interrupted. I talked to my grandmother last night. I told her the truth, that my heart is with you, and she gave me her blessing. She told me I can go with you and still be part of my family, that I can visit them. That I'll always be welcome here. Colt's heart was beating so hard he thought it might explode. But I need to know, Jalona continued, her voice trembling. I need to know if you feel the same, because if I go with you, I'm giving up everything. My home, my life here, everything. And I need to know I'm not alone in this. Colt stepped closer to her, taking her hands in his. Jalona, from the moment you walked into my cabin, shivering with cold, something changed in me. I don't know how to explain it. I just know that the thought of living the rest of my life without you is unbearable. Tears were streaming down Jalona's cheeks. So I'm asking you, Colt said, his voice rough with emotion. Will you come with me? Will you build a life by my side? Yes, Jalona whispered. 1,000 times yes. They kissed as the sun rose over the mountains, painting the sky gold and pink. Around them, the tribe was beginning to wake. Some looked surprised, others smiled. Jalona's grandmother came out of her tipi, leaning on a cane. She looked at the scene and nodded approvingly. Kimimla came over, wiping away tears. Wait a minute, what about me? Jalona and Colt separated, laughing. What do you mean? Jalona asked. You two don't think you're leaving me here, do you? Kimimla crossed her arms. We've been together our whole lives. I'm not about to start separating now. Colt looked at Jalona, who was smiling widely. Well, Cowboy, do you have room for one more? Colt laughed, happiness flooding his chest. There's always room. But then angry voices cut through the moment. This is ridiculous. A group of young warriors approached, led by Napeshni, the most vocal of them all. First they flee, then they return, and now they're leaving again with a stranger. The atmosphere changed instantly. Joy turned to tension. Napeshni planted himself in front of Colt, his posture aggressive. Cowboy, you have no right to take our women. I'm not taking them, Colt replied calmly. They're choosing to go. Because you've tricked them with pretty words, spat another warrior. The tribe weakens every day, we need every person. Jalona stepped forward, her voice firm. Napeshni, I respect your concern for the tribe, but I am a person, not property. I have the right to choose my own path. The path of the selfish, Napeshni shouted. What about your duty, your responsibility? The crowd had gathered now. Some looked disapprovingly at Jalona and Kimimla. Others seemed sympathetic but unsure. Then Takoda pushed through the crowd. Enough! His voice resonated with authority. Even Napeshni stepped back. Napeshni, I understand your concern, Takoda said, his tone grave but not cruel. The tribe is important, the community is important, but listen to me carefully. A strong tribe is not one that holds its people by force. It is one that inspires them to stay out of love. But I haven't finished. Takoda looked at every person present. Jalona and Kimimla do not owe us their lives. They owe us respect. Yes, they owe us to honor their ancestors, yes, but they should not sacrifice their happiness out of fear or guilt. He turned to the two women. You promised to visit, you promised not to forget where you come from. We promise, both said in unison. You promised to teach your future children about their heritage, about your people. Yes, Jalona said firmly. Always, Takoda nodded. Then he looked at Colt. And you, Cowboy, do you promise to respect their culture, to allow them to maintain their connection with their tribe? I promise, Colt answered without hesitation. Takoda turned to Napeshni and the other warriors. Then it is decided. They have my blessing as the leader of this tribe. Napeshni clenched his jaw, clearly unsatisfied, but in the face of the leader's word, he bowed his head in acceptance, albeit reluctantly. The other warriors did the same, slowly stepping back. Jalona's grandmother came over, tears in her wrinkled eyes. Girl, come here. Jalona ran to her arms. They held each other for a long time. Visit me soon, her grandmother whispered. Don't make this old woman wait too long. I promise, grandmother, I promise I'll come every month. Kimimla's mother also said goodbye to her daughter, crying but smiling. Be happy, my girl, that's all a mother can ask for. The preparations for departure were quick. The tribe, though some were still skeptical, helped prepare provisions. Takoda personally gave Colt a map. The new lands are here, he pointed. 3 days north of your ranch, the path is marked. Don't get lost when you come to visit. I won't get lost, Colt promised. Chitsa, who had been so stern at first, approached Jalona. To everyone's surprise, she smiled. I always knew you were different, girl. Different isn't bad, just different. She handed Jalona a small leather pouch. Medicinal herbs for your new home. Jalona hugged her, tears falling. Thank you, Aunt Chitsa. Finally, it was time to leave. Colt, Jalona, and Kimimla mounted their horses. The entire tribe had gathered to say goodbye. As they began to ride away, Jalona looked back one last time. Her grandmother stood there, leaning on her cane, one hand raised in farewell. Tears blurred Jalona's vision, but she smiled and waved back. The return journey took 4 days. This time there were no storms, no dangers, just 3 people riding together, talking, laughing, imagining the future. When they finally saw Colt's ranch on the horizon, Kimimla whistled. It's smaller than I remembered, Colt laughed. Yeah, well, I wasn't expecting permanent company. Well then, you'd better start building, Kimimla joked. And that's exactly what they did. In the following weeks, with help from Colt's neighbors, they built a second small house next to the original cabin. It was modest but sturdy, with a window facing the mountains. My own house, Kimimla marveled the day they finished. I never thought I'd have my own house. 2 months later, when the spring flowers began to bloom, Colt and Jalona were married. It was a simple ceremony at the ranch with neighbors as witnesses, but what made it special was that Takoda, Jalona's grandmother, Chitsa, and several members of the tribe traveled to be there. Even Napeshni came. He approached Colt before the ceremony. Cowboy, he said stiffly, I still don't fully agree with this, but I see how you look at Jalona and I see how she looks at you. He extended his hand. Take good care of her. Colt shook his hand firmly. With my life. The ceremony blended traditions. Jalona wore a simple white dress but with traditional Apache beads that her grandmother had sewn on. Kimimla was her maid of honor, radiant with happiness. When Colt and Jalona kissed as husband and wife, the crowd erupted in applause. American neighbors whistled and shouted. The tribe members sang a traditional celebration song. 2 worlds united. That night, as the celebration continued, Colt and Jalona slipped away for a moment. They stood together on the hill behind the ranch, looking at the stars. Did you ever imagine this? Jalona asked, snuggling against him. What, marrying a beautiful Apache woman who broke into my house during a snowstorm? Jalona playfully elbowed him. You know what I mean. Colt held her tighter. No, I never imagined anything as perfect as this. They looked down below where 2 houses stood side by side. Warm light shone from the windows. Laughter floated in the night air. 2 houses, Jalona murmured. 3 hearts. 1 family, 1 home, Colt corrected, kissing her forehead. Our home. And under the infinite stars, surrounded by ancient mountains, they began their new life together.